So our next speaker is Dr. Avigail Ferdman. He's a research fellow and head of the Technology Ethics Lab in the Department of Humanities and Arts here at the Technion. Her research interests span political philosophy, virtue ethics, and technology ethics, focusing on AI and human flourishing. She has published extensively in leading journals including Philosophy and Technology, Minds and Machine, AI and Society, and Inquiry. Dr. Ferdman is building an international community of political philosophers of technology under the auspices of the Society for Philosophy and Technology, SPT. All are welcome to join.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank Erez, Liat, David, and everyone else who was involved in getting this event together. It's really nice to be a part of this growing community of philosophers of AI. My presentation today is about us, about humans. And I'll look at how some AI capabilities might disrupt our common knowledge and shared understanding. And it's a collaborative project together with Ayelet Baram-Tzabari, here also at the Technion, and Bruce Lowenstein from Cornell. Okay, so our motivation for this project is the worry that AI's capacities, or rather the uncritical use of these capacities could undermine the prospects of common knowledge and common ground of understanding. Our point of departure is that we live in an age of growing epistemic anarchy, that is extreme distrust in epistemic authorities, leading to segregated epistemic camps, which in turn manifests in a lack of shared ideas that is crucial for the well-ordered democratic society. And our worry is that AI could accelerate the fragmentation of epistemic networks, even in the absence of bad actors. So to begin diagnosing the AI epistemic common ground nexus, we propose to draw on political philosophy, and specifically on the concept of the epistemic basic structure. The epistemic basic structure is the collection of social institutions that play a critical role in the production and dissemination of knowledge and in shaping persons' ability to assimilate knowledge and achieve epistemic autonomy as individuals and as citizens. Epistemic autonomy is self-governance in the intellectual realm. On the one hand, it's the ability to be free from interference, manipulation, and coercion in the epistemic realm. And on the other hand, it's about being able to excel in our intellectual virtues, being open-minded, intellectually courageous, curious, as well as intellectually humble when necessary, being able to make good decisions in inquiry, knowing how to think well for oneself, and when to rely on the intellectual efforts of others. So the institutions of the epistemic basic structure include science and education, the media, search engines, libraries, museums, think tanks, and various government agencies, and we argue increasingly AI corporations, because they are involved in how we develop our epistemic autonomy and cultivate our epistemic capacities as individuals and citizens. Now, importantly, and this is based on John Rawls' idea of the basic structure of society, the epistemic basic structure includes only institutions, and it doesn't apply to voluntary associations like, for example, religious associations, the church, etc., or to individuals. And the reason for the separation between institutions and voluntary associations is because the basic structure is highly involuntary. As individuals, we don't have control over the institutions. And so the normative commitment or the normative job of the epistemic basic structure is that it should serve all citizens fairly and reliably. And more specifically, its job is to ensure epistemic justice without paternalism. So let's unpack this. Epistemic justice is a condition of non-domination, one's ability to exert epistemic influence. And I'm quoting here from Fricker, that all human beings can contribute to the shaping of social meanings and that all putative sources of information are included. That is, that all are able to influence what comes to pass as knowledge. And so epistemic justice is the opposite of epistemic injustice, inflicting harm specifically on individuals in their capacity as knowers. The epistemic basic structure is also committed to non-paternalism in the individual, in the private sphere, to not violate one's epistemic autonomy for their own good, unless there are overriding reasons, and we'll talk about them. Now, why is this the job of the basic structure? Both epistemic justice and non-paternalism, because the basic structure is involuntary, as I said, because it shapes us as knowers and the conditions for our epistemic autonomy. Okay, but here we come to some tension, because we have to consider the possibility of epistemic ignorance, or more specifically, more accurately, willful epistemic ignorance. So the basic structure, the epistemic basic structure, as I said, only applies to institutions, for example, public schools, and not to individuals or voluntary associations, like, for example, the church. And so individuals and voluntary associations can legitimately practice self-inflicted epistemic ignorance. Epistemic interference in these cases of self-inflicted epistemic ignorance would be paternalistic. But epistemic paternalism requires overriding reasons. In other words, to be epistemically paternalist towards individuals or associations requires some sort of special reason. Otherwise, it violates the epistemic autonomy of those individuals or members of the association. Okay, so how does this play out in the case of one institution in the epistemic basic structure, specifically the case of science communication? Science communication is quite straightforwardly an institution in the epistemic basic structure, as it is part of the institution of science more generally. And moreover, it is increasingly concerned with advancing epistemic justice, being inclusive in the practice of communicating science to marginalized communities, and being inclusive towards multiple epistemologies. Science communication is concerned with how to better explain science and technology, building public engagement activities, and analyzing interactions of science and society. Inclusive science communication is perceived, therefore, as a path for overcoming systemic inequalities in access to and engagement with science by recognizing things like discrimination, oppression, and intersectionality, being open to diverse perspectives, and cultivating belonging among participants. Inclusive science communication is also implicitly, and as a matter of practice, committed, we argue, to non-paternalism by trying to find ways to reach audience with different cultural and religious sensitivities. And the underlying normative commitment of inclusive science communication is epistemic justice without being paternalistic. Okay, so now we come to the question of AI. There are definitely certain benefits to integrating AI tools in inclusive science communication. Things like being able to better explain complex topics in simplified language, being able to make science and knowledge more accessible to different communities, groups, individuals, and also helping in adapting content to different cultural contexts and sensitivities. But there are also costs or serious trade-offs with adapting scientific content to cultural sensitivities. In other words, tailoring content with cultural or religious sensitivity in mind may backfire and might actually undermine epistemic justice and could further fragment the epistemic common ground. And so what we're going to do in the remainder is we're going to highlight some of these trade-offs and how specifically AI might be involved in these trade-offs. So I'm going to propose two hypothetical scenarios, but the first actually starts with something that actually did happen. And it pertains to the stalactite cave near Jerusalem. It's a very well-known area of natural beauty in Israel. At the cave's entrance, there used to be at least a sign that cites scientific accounts of the Earth's age. And it explains the mechanism behind geological dating methods for determining the Earth's age, including the phrase, some of the stalactites are over 5 million years old. And you can see that it's scratched out in the left image there. That's real. So this sign has been repeatedly vandalized, presumably by ultra-Orthodox people who live nearby. And presumably, these individuals might take offense to the wording of the sign. Their objection would probably be because they disagree with the scientific fact over here, since they hold a belief in a creation timeline of about 6,000 years as outlined in the biblical narrative. Okay, now to the hypothetical scenario. The park management is committed to inclusivity and to making the natural beauty site accessible to all groups. And they're considering a few strategies to promote inclusivity and welcome all kinds of groups to the park. Okay, first of all, we don't need a sign, right? We can use smart glasses instead of a physical sign. This won't be vandalized. And in these smart glasses, we have a few options of what we communicate. So the first option is to provide one version for the general public and one culturally adapted version for example, ultra-religious groups. The culturally adapted version will not mention the age of Earth, according to scientific accounts, nor mention geological dating methods. And users will choose in advance which version to view. This way, ultra-Orthodox visitors will not have to confront the scientific version at all. The second option is to provide a pluralistic version alongside the previous ones. So this version presents both worldviews together. It will say something like, according to a scientific account and geological dating methods, the cave is at least 300,000 years old. And according to the biblical account, the cave must be younger, but still very old. And the third option is to communicate the following. According to the biblical account, the cave is very old. If you want to hear what scientists say about the age of the cave and how it was formed, please press here. Otherwise, please continue. So these are the three possibilities. There might be more, but for reasons of time, we've just given those. Oh, second hypothetical scenario. Kenora Rainy River is a prestigious university. It's a made-up university, but I borrowed it from Jerry Cohen for anyone who's familiar. Okay, so this Kenora River University is celebrating its centenary. And as part of the festivities, it's producing 100 short videos of their researchers presenting their breakthroughs. The videos offer a wide variety of subjects and a diversity of presenters, aiming to illuminate the university's extensive accomplishments over the past century, while highlighting its commitment to inclusivity. Now, several local schools have approached the university's communication office and have asked for a sanitized version that they could share with their students, their pupils. Now, the communications office is considering integrating an AI-based recommender system into the platform, which will allow users to filter content they see based on their preferred worldviews. Specifically, they're considering the following options. Okay, do nothing. Okay. Leave the videos as they are. Offer a diversity mode. You can filter based on your choice of, for example, underrepresented groups. Offer a filter that enables the viewer to see only videos with presenters they feel comfortable watching, for example, only male presenters. Offer a content filter that allows you to choose or to filter out words that you're uncomfortable with, for example, evolution. Offer a visual modesty mode where the presenters in the videos are made to look, using deepfake technology, as if they are dressed, for example, more modestly. And use a deepfake algorithm to transform, for example, a woman presenter into a man presenter, again, to accommodate modesty concerns of certain cultural groups. Okay, so what these kind of hypothetical scenarios are meant to highlight is that the AI capabilities of manipulating content can do two things with respect to science communication. They can alter and remove content and epistemic agents. So, for example, the removal of epistemic agents occurs when the technology is used to deepfake a woman into a man, so as not to offend cultural sensitivities, or using the modesty modifying filter. So clearly, I think, clearly to me at least, there's a violation of the dignity of the epistemic agents who are being removed from the relevant epistemic environment. And so we confront a case of epistemic injustice. But I think a more interesting implication of uncritically using AI to address cultural sensitivities is that it creates an environment that not only affords epistemic ignorance, but encourages it to the detriment of what we call the epistemic commons, and here's how. So the introduction of hyper-tailored content through AI tools in the name of inclusivity can make it very easy to accommodate epistemic ignorance. Science communicators adopting these tools may, in effect, be contributing to epistemic ignorance by making these tools of removal or alteration readily available to users. Making hyper-tailored content available at any point of exposure to science affords the possibility of acquiring knowledge in ways that systematically removes or alters content that is incompatible with the knower's worldview or beliefs. What some of the proposed strategies in the hypothetical scenarios might be inadvertently doing is entrenching epistemic bunkers. Epistemic bunkers are epistemic structures that are designed to keep their members safe in what they perceive as a hostile epistemic environment. Now, most communities in modern societies have had to come into some contact with competing epistemologies in their daily lives, right? We encounter other people and other types of knowledge at work, while shopping, dealing with government agencies, et cetera, et cetera. When we are in in the public sphere. Now, what some of these AI tools do is that they easily and effortlessly provide hyper-tailored knowledge, creating or bringing those epistemic bunkers into the public sphere. And what this does, I think, is problematic because as humans, when we co-inhabit space with others, we enable a common space for mutual manifestation, which is very important for acquiring knowledge. So, since I don't really have a lot of time, I'll just mention very briefly that what I hope that the hypothetical scenarios showed is that by creating the possibility of self-inflicting epistemic ignorance in the public sphere, we might be fragmenting the epistemic commons, which is the stock of knowledge, ideas, evidences, perspectives, that is necessary to uphold society as a democratic community where we have a minimum stock of shared ideas and a shared ground of understanding. Just one final note before I finish. I think this is a cautionary tale not just for science communication. I think that what we can take away from this is that excessively hyper-tailoring and personalizing content can have detrimental effects when we think about other contexts, such as individual learning as well. So I'll finish with that. Thank you.
Thank you. This was fascinating. I, as someone who I have an ultra-Orthodox sister, I can say that there are epistemic bunkers. So maybe they're changing form, but not necessarily created anew in society. But also I want to say that I really recommend watching Trump's inauguration of Winning the Race program by the US, where his advisors explain to him that the AI that the US is going to use is going to be a good AI that incorporates values of a certain type. So I think that even in the more general AIs might also be creating epistemic bunkers while manifesting as presumably neutral when they're, it's clearly not.
Yes, thank you. I think, sorry. Yes, I think I want to agree. My worry is that even in the absence of bad actors, of AI models that are designed to propagate misinformation and things like that, even then, the fact of our shrinking into this solipsistic mode of acquiring knowledge where we only interact with what's with something that is very hyper-personalized will also be dangerous, because in order for us to have some common ground of understanding of even basic facts, we need to be able to have some sort of deliberative and an active communication with others, and to learn and understand together with others. That's my worry.
As they are used in practice, seem to be pushing for epistemic convergence rather than divergence. So Grok on Twitter is often appealed to as a neutral referee, and despite its many shortcomings, it tends to tell flat earthers that they're wrong and tend tell anti-vax people that they're wrong, and like it does seem to push against this. So I'd be interested in your thoughts on whether on-net AI will push in a positive or negative direction.
Yeah, I hesitate to speculate, but I think that the fact that models tend to converge on the content doesn't necessarily take away, I guess, from my worry. Because phenomenologically it's different. The fact that I will receive the same content but in a way that's personalized to me, while you might receive the same content but in a way that's personalized to you, that might make our mutual understanding of the same thing slightly more difficult than if we are learning it together. This is my worry. Now, it might be an empirical issue, who knows, but I'm in the business of worrying.
Thank you so much, Avigail. That was fantastic. I have a question about, has a little bit to do about the question about the neutrality. How do we know if we are in the bunker? Because you talked about personalized contents, right? When we're dealing with minorities and we are the majority, right? It's easy to say, okay, they are in the bunker. But, you know, very often our personalized content is aligned with the mainstream views that, you know, that are very often unquestioned. So this is the question, can we know whether, you know, we are in the correct direction for this opening up, for this plurality and so on?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Alice. This is super important. I think the inclusive sort of commitment, which is quite young, I think, in science communication, is trying to pinpoint this worry precisely. And it's trying to be critical or reflective on the notions that we are, as scientists, you know, the keepers of truth and scientific authority, etc., to be reflective and critical about our own biases. My colleagues are from science communication, and so what I think is really interesting is that there's a tension to be acknowledged, at least, in science communication, that in the practice of being inclusive and trying to avoid paternalism, we don't usher in practices that make our epistemology so fragmented that we can't find a common ground anymore. So your concern is absolutely valid. I think in science communication and in science, the philosophy of science, there are approaches to try to address this worry. I don't know, if, you know, Mertonian norms or whatever, or later generations of Mertonian norms, and being reflective on how we do science communication. But I think what mostly my colleagues in science communication have noticed is that there's a pull towards inclusivity and non-paternalism in a way that tends to neglect or not consider the harms and the costs, the potential harms and the costs. And so this is meant to kind of float this tension, because if we are aware of it, we can, you know, address it maybe better.
I just realized that actually the argument is against inclusivity, and so it's actually very similar to what Trump is saying. We should give less attention to inclusivity or somehow reduce the way that inclusivity is impacting our approach to knowledge and technology, and actually enforce our values.
This is the first time I've been associated with Trump. So First time for everything. Okay, so I don't want to say we should throw inclusivity out. What I'm saying is slightly more nuanced. We shouldn't throw the baby with the bathwater. I'm not against inclusivity. It's super important. I think there's different types of cultural sensitivities or minorities. And being inclusive might mean different things with regards to different cultural sensitivities, epistemologies, political power, gatekeeping. I didn't have time to talk about this, but there's a lot of gatekeeping happening in those epistemic bunkers. And it's not the same for the community leaders as it is for the members of the community themselves. And so epistemic injustice might be, they might be suffering epistemic injustice, whereas their leaders might not. So it's a nuanced situation, and we need to think about it carefully. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you very much.